I want you to think about someone you know personally. Maybe it's your dad. Maybe it's an uncle. Maybe it's a neighbor you grew up watching. Someone who worked hard their entire life, showed up every single day, never complained, paid their bills on time, did everything the right way by every definition of the phrase. And yet somehow, somewhere in their late 50s, they looked up and realized the math just never added up the way it was supposed to. The promotions came. The salary increased. Life got more comfortable over time. But real wealth, the kind that gives you genuine freedom, genuine options, the ability to stop working because you want to rather than because your body finally forces you to, that part never quite arrived. Why? Were they lazy? No. Were they irresponsible? No. Did they make catastrophically bad decisions? Not really. Here's what actually happened to them. And here's what is quietly happening to millions of people right now who are doing everything they were told to do and still falling behind without understanding why. They were being taxed, not by the government, not by anything they could see on a statement or a pay stub, by something invisible, something that doesn't have a name on any financial document, something that has been systematically draining middle-class wealth for decades while everyone was too busy working hard to notice it was happening. The story most of us grew up with about money goes something like this. Work hard, get a good job, save what you can. Maybe invest a little in a retirement account. Be responsible. Be patient. And eventually, over time, things will work out. That story isn't a lie exactly, but it is dangerously incomplete. And the part it leaves out is the part that explains why two people can live nearly identical financial lives, same income, same savings rate, same level of responsibility, and end up in completely different places 20 years later. The story we were told was built around one variable, income. Earn more, save more, have more, simple. What it completely ignored was the system operating around that income. The invisible architecture of costs, taxes, inflation, and financial structures that quietly determines how much of what you earn you actually get to keep and grow. Hard work gets you income, but income alone, without understanding the system it flows through, gets quietly redirected away from you in ways so gradual and so normalized that most people never notice until it's too late to change course. That system is the invisible tax, and today we're going to name every part of it. Let's talk about Mark. Mark is 34. He earns $68,000 a year. He works hard, gets modest raises, contributes to his 401k, and lives what most people would describe as a financially responsible life. By every conventional measure, Mark is doing the right things. But let's follow his $68,000 through the actual system it passes through on its way to his life. First stop, income tax. Depending on his state, Mark takes home somewhere around $50,000 after federal and state taxes. So before he makes a single decision, roughly 26% of his labor has already been claimed. Now Mark pays rent. He lives in a mid-sized city where a decent apartment runs $400 a month. That's $16,800. A year going to a landlord, building zero equity, generating zero return, simply exchanging money for the right to occupy space. He has a car payment. Nothing extravagant. $380 a month on a reasonably priced vehicle. Another $4,560 a year flowing into a depreciating asset. Groceries, utilities, phone, subscriptions, insurance. Conservatively, another $1,000 a month. $12,000 annually. Mark contributes 6% to his 401k, about $4,080 a year. His company matches half of that. He feels good about this. He should. But here's what happens to that money once it's inside a traditional 401k. It grows tax deferred, which sounds great, until he retires and withdraws it, at which point it gets taxed as ordinary income. The government essentially gave him a loan on his tax bill, not a forgiveness of it. After everything, Mark has maybe $12,000 to $15,000 left over annually that he can genuinely direct. And here's where the most invisible tax of all begins its work. Inflation. Every year, the purchasing power of money sitting still decreases by roughly 3 to 4% on average, which means Mark's $15,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.5% interest is actually losing real value every single year, quietly, without a single statement showing the loss. Without a single notification, Mark is working hard. Mark is being responsible. And a system of invisible taxes is systematically redirecting the majority of his labor before it. ever has a chance to build anything lasting. Let me name them clearly because most people have never seen them listed together. Inflation tax. The one nobody votes for and everybody pays. Every year you hold cash instead of assets that grow faster than inflation, you lose purchasing power. This tax hits hardest on the middle class because they hold the highest percentage of their wealth in cash and low-yield savings accounts compared to wealthy people, who hold it in appreciating assets. Lifestyle inflation tax. Every raise gets absorbed by a bigger apartment, a newer car, a more expensive routine. Income increases, but net worth barely moves. The raise felt like progress. The spending quietly neutralized it. This is one of the most psychologically seductive taxes because each individual upgrade feels completely reasonable in isolation. Convenience tax. The modern economy is extraordinarily efficient at extracting small, recurring amounts of money from busy, tired people who value ease over optimization. Subscriptions you barely use. Delivery fees on every order. Premium everything. None of it individually devastating. All of it collectively representing thousands of dollars annually that quietly drain from accounts without ever triggering a conscious financial decision. Time poverty tax. This one is the cruelest. The middle class is kept so busy working, commuting, managing the logistics of a full life, that they have almost no time to educate themselves about the financial system they're operating inside. Wealthy people hire accountants, financial advisors, estate planners. They outsource the cognitive load of money management. The middle class does it themselves imperfectly, in the margins of exhausted evenings, and the gap in outcomes reflects that gap in resources. The debt interest tax. Credit card balances, car loans, student debt. The middle class pays a significant percentage of their monthly income servicing debt at interest rates between 6 and 24%. Every dollar paid in interest is a dollar that went directly from their labor to a financial institution's profit, building nothing, creating no equity, generating no return. Together, these invisible taxes can easily consume 40 to 60% of a middle-class person's earning potential over a lifetime, not through a single dramatic loss, through thousands of small, normalized, invisible redirections that never individually feel catastrophic. Here's the deeper idea, the one that reframes everything. Wealthy people and middle-class people don't just have different amounts of money, they operate inside fundamentally different financial architectures. And the architecture does most of the work, in both directions. The wealthy person's financial architecture is built to capture and grow money. Income arrives, gets immediately directed into assets, real estate, equities, businesses that appreciate and generate returns. Taxes get strategically minimized through structures that aren't available to people who don't know they exist. Expenses get covered by asset returns rather than labor. Over time, the system accelerates and becomes largely self-sustaining. The middle-class person's financial architecture, through no fault of their own, is built to spend in service. Income arrives, passes through a gauntlet of taxes, fixed expenses, debt payments, and lifestyle costs, and emerges as a small remainder that may or may not get invested. The system doesn't accelerate. It plateaus. The hard work is the same. The effort is the same. The hours are the same, but one architecture multiplies the output of that effort and the other quietly absorbs it. This is not a moral failing. It is not a character flaw. It is what happens when you work hard inside a system you don't fully understand. Charlie Munger, one of the greatest investors in history, said it simply, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." The financial system is not neutral. It is designed with incentives, and those incentives systematically favor people who understand them and consistently work against people who don't. Understanding the system isn't cynicism. It's the first requirement for changing your position within it. So what do you actually do with this? 3 moves, in order of importance. First, move money from cash into assets faster. Every dollar sitting in a savings account, earning less than inflation, is paying the inflation tax. It doesn't need to be complicated. A broad market index fund, a real estate investment, even a high-yield savings account. Anything that keeps your money moving faster than inflation is better than a standard account slowly losing purchasing power. The goal isn't to eliminate all cash. It's to shrink the portion sitting idle to the minimum you need for genuine emergencies. Second, audit the convenience tax ruthlessly. Set aside 1 hour this month to go through every recurring charge leaving your accounts. Subscriptions, memberships, automatic renewals. Most people find between $150 and $400 per month in charges. They either forgot about or could easily replace with free alternatives. That's up to $4,800 a year that could be redirected into assets. It isn't glamorous work, but it is high-return work. Third, invest in financial education like it's a second job, because for the middle class it functionally is. The time poverty tax is real, but an hour a week spent understanding how money actually works compounds into a dramatically different financial reality over 5 years. Not because knowledge is magic, but because every invisible tax on this list becomes visible and therefore manageable the moment you understand how it works. If this kind of financial clarity is what you're looking for, the real mechanics behind why money works the way it does for different people, subscribe to Realveil Studios. We break down the psychology and the systems behind money in a way that actually changes how you see your financial life. Hit subscribe because the next video goes even deeper. Here's what I want you to take away from this. The person who worked their whole life and still ended up without real financial freedom didn't fail because they weren't hardworking enough. They weren't lazy. They weren't irresponsible. They were simply operating inside a system they were never taught to see. And you cannot navigate something you cannot see. The invisible tax is real. It is large, and it has been collecting from you, probably for years, without ever sending you a bill or asking for your signature. But invisible doesn't mean permanent. The moment you name it, inflation tax, lifestyle inflation tax, convenience tax, time poverty tax, debt interest tax, it stops being invisible. And the moment it stops being invisible, you have something you didn't have before, a choice. Hard work was never the complete answer. It was always just the starting point. The people who build real wealth work hard and understand the system their hard work operates inside. Now you're starting to understand it too.